Welcome to the draft physics presentation. A couple of subjects here. I think I'll touch on the fine-tuning argument again, and this Stephen Bro guy made a few videos in the past, 5 months ago. I never saw. Quite interesting, actually. Very good work and such, except not quite enough detail for me to draw conclusions or to speculate on causes and whatnot, but I will. Let's do a little of that maybe, and then the rest is just, I suppose, some comments at the end maybe, or something like that. So to the Stephen videos. So he only has about 7 here, but the 3 important ones, or 4 important ones here a few months ago on the double slit experiment. Now the one called Just Testing, so I'll leave a link below to his video channel, and then you can see the videos. You know, he's doing a joke, an Attenborough joke, and really quite funny, fairly good, so we'll give him credit. And then the others are, one is a reflection of between 2 mirrors, zigzagging between the mirrors. I don't know if you can see that. Let me see if you can see that, and I don't know. Yeah, you can sort of see that, right? So you see it, beam zigzags between the mirrors, and comes out very similar to the single slit experiment results. I'm not exactly sure. I think this is like the light tube thing. The light, I think, is reflecting twice, 2 different angles, I believe. I don't remember. You know, remember that whole light tube thing? I just don't remember what was the end result of that was. I think it was that the light travels 2 different paths. But anyway, I'll have to go back and research that, I suppose, or something like that. But yeah, I'm just curious whether there's any glass. These are just metal, I think, reflective metal. I'm not sure. See, glass always messes things up because it does create these internal reflections that are quite curious. So we'll jump back to the video page, and so I can't speculate too much on this. I mean, obviously the beam has to be coming out at some weird angle, but how can it be doing that and look like it's coming out straight? So that doesn't make sense. So I guess we need to know where the beam is actually coming out to understand that experiment, because obviously if it's going this jagging, it can't come out straight. So there's something I don't understand there. So if Stephen could add a little more information, because I don't quite understand. Yeah, I mean, frankly, the beam has to come out at an angle. If it goes in at an angle, it's got to come out at an angle. It's sort of the way it works, I think. Anyway, yeah, because the angles are sharp enough that it couldn't do what that pattern is on its own. So anyway, the other curious one was a video on the double and single slit experiment anomaly. And so he's using glass slides, and they're apparently really good ones because the pattern he gets is really good. It's a high quality double slit pattern. So I'd almost want to know where he bought them just so I could see if I can buy the same kind. You know, cheaper of course. Anyway, eBay or whatever. But the trick is that it's usually those are slides, you know, that have paint on them or some kind of stuff, and so it kind of would make a difference which way you had it. You know, was the glass layer in front of the slits, or was the glass layer after the slits? And so what he's getting is a reflection backwards of the same pattern, similar, a little more broken, but the same basic pattern. It is reflecting backward instead of going forward through the slits. There's a pattern created without going through the slits, maybe. But the trick is he used his finger to block the slit, and that would create a reflection. You know, even though your finger is not very reflective, a laser beam is going to reflect off your finger, and so that might be causing it to go back through the slits. So yeah, that sort of needs a little more information also, but interesting effect. And So there's lots of optics here. You know, it's light, and it's hitting materials and blah blah blah, and no one seems very interested in documenting or understanding any of those optics. They're just going to make all these bold assumptions. I mean, I watched a couple of interferometer videos today, and both of them just sloughed over the, you know, half mirrored glass as a beam splitter at the 45-degree angle, and you're just saying, isn't that redundant? What do you need the mirror for? A plain piece of glass will do the beam splitting. You don't need the mirror. It's superfluous. So why is it there? And how can it be 50-50 with the mirror on the glass when it's 50-50 without the mirror on the glass? I mean, these are real questions, and people just, you know, pretend like this isn't a curious fact, or a fact that needs to be explained, and no one seems to feel any need to explain what's the function of the mirror on the glass if we already are bending the splitting the beam in two with just a plain piece of glass. All right. So anyway, and even with the plain piece of glass, is the question of, is 25% reflecting off the top surface and 25% off the bottom surface? Very, you know, these are all good questions, and nobody, like I said, there's just absolutely no interest in investigating any of this stuff. Maybe I'll send a message to the 60 symbols guys and ask them to explain the difference between a beam splitter made with a plain piece of glass and a beam splitter made with mirror on it, or a cube, because there's real optics here, and nobody's, like I said, it's just demonstrating that, you know, there's not much scientific curiosity. All this talk about these people being skeptics and all this kind of stuff, they're clearly not hungry for answers. They're just hungry for things that support their theory, and they really don't want to hear about anything else. They don't want to prove it to be an anomaly, as Stephen called it, you know, something worthy of debunking. They don't even want to try in defense of their bullshit. So anyway, link below. Yeah, so I mean, I wish I could draw some conclusions, but I'm just a little too, you know, the thing to do is to flip the slide and see if you get the same reflection on the wall, and then block it with something else, like a mirror, tilt it so the light goes in a new direction or something, but don't block it with something that the light could still reflect off of. Then, you know, block it with something at an angle so the light goes in some other direction. Anyway, I think would be better. Alright, so yeah, I might as well get to the other subject, which I sort of want to use to say something deeper than just this fine-tuning argument. But anyway, do you have any evidence that the lines are getting thicker when you change your measurement units? Look, they're just using an illustration of how much something can look like a lot when you have a lot of something. Okay, so a lot can look like a lot when you have a lot. Okay, I mean, yeah, I don't know how else to say it to you. Like I said, if I took all the apples it would take to change, if I made the earth out of apples, and I peeled off all the apples it would take before the Earth's gravity changed enough to cause any significant change in, say, the moon's orbit, it would be a tremendous amount of apples. Alright, try to do the math. There isn't any math. There's just statements by people that the whole universe will fall apart if you change this constant just a little bit. But there's no math. See out of every possible configuration how many of the universes enable life to form. So again, this assumption that there's multiverses or something. Who's arguing for the existence of any of that nonsense? The fact that life exists is rare by, I think, any logical deduction. You can't, there's no reason not to conclude it just because we know all the other planets. For example, life didn't just find a way. So as much as life finds a way, well, it didn't find a way on the moon, and it didn't find a way on Mars, and didn't find a way on all these other planets. So it obviously just doesn't find a way. The DNA molecule is just one DNA molecule. There aren't versions of the DNA molecule with slightly different amino acids. There's not different branches of DNA molecule. So we know the DNA molecule only happened one time. It's only one time that that particular arrangement was forced into existence. That became capable of creating something more than just a replicating molecule. It became something that could replicate a form. That would essentially replicate its own reader, I suppose, is the key ingredient. I mean, for the molecule to work, it actually needs something that can read it. And without the reader, the molecule is of no use. So it's really that combination. But anyway, that would convince me. Well, like I said, whatever you want me to do to reinterpret the babble of a religious kook is a waste of my time, in my opinion. So I don't know exactly what math you want me to debunk, because there isn't any. All there is talk about how the universe will fall apart. And I can give you arguments to demonstrate how that wouldn't be the truth either. I mean, 100 years ago there was no dark matter or dark energy in the universe, and physicists didn't think the universe was going to fall apart. Okay, so somewhere we added 80% more matter to the universe. 80% more. I mean, the universe, they're saying now, is more fake matter than real matter. So they more than doubled the amount, well, they almost doubled the, no, they more than doubled the amount of mass in the universe, and somehow their math held together somehow. So clearly these assumptions about what can't possibly be changed and what can be changed is just subjective garbage. Alright, talking percentage, as it seems like that's not affected by your critique. Well, again, my critique is that I can't give you the unlikelihood of creating a DNA molecule if I have the same Earth environment and it's not identical, and that the 7 lightning strikes don't happen within 15 minutes to create the first one, or whatever the thing was to create the first cell, let's say, because that's really the game. The first cell. So the cell doesn't get created, there's no life. And clearly a bunch of different kinds of cells didn't get created, so clearly it's a very rare thing that happens. Now you can go to every step of evolution and you'll find things that only happen one time. Lots of things that only happened one time. There aren't like a bunch of branches coming off of a tree trunk. There's just the tree trunk, okay, and then variations off that one tree trunk, but there's no, I'm just saying the branches, the better way to say it is the branches fan out. There's huge numbers of branches, limb, then limb, then limb, then limb, then limb, then limb. We're way the hell out on a limb. Way, 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 way out on a limb. So we're not anywhere near the trunk, and every one of those limbs is a limb that only happened one time. And so there's, you could argue, the odds of us existing are insanely high, against it. Of something even being intelligent. Like I said, neurons only happen one time. There's no other thinking cell. There's no other feeling cell. There's no other sensing cell. Neurons are it. So without neurons, there's no thinking. It's just the truth. And there's no variation on that theme. So again, it's something that happened just once. Special circumstance created this cell that was capable of managing electricity and transmitting it to send signals. Hugely important device when you consider our function. one time. So I don't know, you know, you're going to keep badgering me with this nonsense because you have a proclivity to be religious, I guess. You know, that's all I can, I don't know. The fact is that we're really rare. So if you want to, and we're delicate in the sense we're built on a whole bunch of dependencies. So, and we grew into those dependencies. Our ancestors ate what we would consider shit. That is, part of our evolution was learning to eat their shit. So, you know, those are the dependencies of our existence. And you can't separate them out and say life is inevitable. It has to go through those dependencies, you know, the steps. So clearly, I mean, it's not going to just happen each time you start a universe, stir up a universe, you're going to have the cake get baked. This kind of cake. And we see what the rest of life is. You know, most of the life on Earth for 1 billion years, life was just cells. For 1 billion years, it was just cells. There wasn't any animals or anything interesting. There were just cells floating around. For 1 billion years. Okay, nothing dramatic happened. So it's a very vague thing. And again, once something is built on the system it exists in, of course its patterns and its structure are going to be dependent on what fuels it. You know, the physics that underlies it. It has to live on those physics. So the way I would suggest you think of this is a way that physics is sort of drifted from. So let's go to the Richard Feynman concession. In one of his lectures, he basically conceded, look, the whole universe could be dirt simple. It could be a checkerboard, okay? Just a very simple mechanism. It's just that there's so much of it, okay, that it's created all kinds of complex patterns in all kinds of places because the checkerboard is insanely huge. And it can create all kinds, there can be all kinds of patterns of checkers in the different locations. And, you know, we just can't, we don't have enough perspective to see we don't have the resolution to be able to look down at the basic function of the universe. And he's sort of making a concession to the fact that unification is a real thing. That the basic mechanism probably should be something simple. That all the forces are created by the same mechanism. That's probably why they do have things in common, like traveling the speed of light. And so these should be sort of clues that the underlying mechanism is kind of simple. And really the only way you could break the rules is to do something that the universe wouldn't do. So let me argue that the universe is something very simple that, like Lego. Okay? It's a Lego universe. It has a simple rule. The Lego, or the cap to this pen. The cap doesn't go on this way, can't go on this way, can't go on any other way but this way. And when it does, it becomes something new. So if you thought of this as a Lego, like this cap had two ends, and this end opens when this end closes on something. You know, simple, just a dirt simple rule. And that can create all the complexity you see if it can do certain things. And as I've pointed out, the simple things it can do would be, you know, interactions. Now, if there's two kinds of things, when they hit each other, you can see the interaction. Now, if they were the same color, you couldn't see the interaction because two things would leave going this way, and two things went in going that way and that way, and you wouldn't be able to tell if they hit each other or missed each other. The two would appear to be exactly the same. But if you change their identity, you can see the interaction could be that now a thing going this way is now going that way. Well, I mean, I've been over that so many times. Could show it on the website, I suppose. You know, it's a simple drawing of it. And so there's a huge difference between having just a tiny difference, just red and black, creates enough difference for you to have all kinds of difference. And then I pointed out that, well, once you can do this right turn thing, well, then you can do 4 right turns and you have a trap. And then something you get trapped for a very long time, maybe forever, or maybe not. And maybe checkers could do that on a checkerboard, so to speak. And you can sort of understand that if a bunch of checkers do that, well then maybe they create an atom. And then you go, you know, the atoms can stick to each other because they have one side that's red and the other sides are all black. And so the red side sticks to the other black side, or whatever the thing would be. And you see that that's the whole mechanism. And if you look at physics, that's sort of what it looks like to me. Now, conventional physics has turned it into 3 or 4 different forces that seem to have completely different mechanisms that they have to be based on, of different granularity and function. And that, in my opinion, is a colossal mistake. They should know that can't be right, that they're really quantum mechanics and the relativity theory. One of those has to be wrong, at least, at minimum. One of them's wrong. And they might both be wrong, and I think they both are. And so they have a lot of, although they have an abstract model that has identified some relationships that exist pretty solidly, what they haven't done is seen the real source of those relationships, the real causes. So they have constants, for example, which we're debating, that are really the same constant, and they've given it a different name in different places, in different ways that it's being utilized. It's really the same force, and they're called it 2 different constants when it's really the same constant, and they need to just translate it into one unit, and they haven't put it in agreeable units. And we do this a lot when it comes to thermal and well, all the energy designations. There should just be one, you know, not 50 different ways to say something's hot. I mean, you can use temperature and Kelvin and calories, and you can do a whole bunch of different labels for the same effect. How many horsepower? I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. So the fact that physics has a bunch of vague and imperfect answers to the fundamental function, you know, you can take that liberty, if you wish, to say that their universe is fine-tuned. But I think if you understood a little better, you'd understand that any universe is going to be fine-tuned, because it has to do certain things. It has to have a mechanism that can create change. It has to, I think, essentially create a mechanism that traps force. It has to do certain basic things, and if it doesn't do those basic things, it will not evolve. There will be the creation of no complexity. So it's just then going to be a bunch of chaos, a bunch of little stuff bouncing around, and I think that's what the universe was essentially and first made of. I think the matter is a condensation of the force. In some circumstances, what happens is 2 pieces of force, black and red, for example, stick to each other, get stuck. Now this mechanism can interpret black force into red force, and red force into black force, because these 2 are stuck. In the real universe, black could never hit red, because they're on 2 different planes. The red stuff's moving on one plane, the black stuff's moving on another. So they're like the black and red squares on a checkerboard, they can never hit. But because of this matter bit, the red squares can hit a black square. They're a translational square. And you can see how that would add huge complexity to a checkerboard if you had some place on the checkerboard where you could turn your red checker into a black checker. You know. Anyway. Or something like that. So I'm just saying all you need is a little mechanism to create some sort of change, and you know, just with a few rules, like the checkers can't be bigger than the squares. Little logic, they could be much smaller than the squares, but they can't be bigger than the squares. Simple rules. So anyway, but you know, like I said, if you people think religion is offering you an answer, I think you're almost too pathetic for a conversation. The popular religions are insanely silly stories. I don't know why you even gravitate to them as answers. The very idea that you look at your own physiology, you've got a picture of a kind of a blubbery, depressed person as an icon. You think a God created that? You think something with intelligence deliberately said, I'll make mediocre pigs and give them the capacity to think, but I'll make them so pathetically selfish and hungry and horny that they can't do anything but think about how to scheme themselves ring-dings and ho-hos? I mean, come on, it's pathetic. So really, I'm not totally uninterested in debunking religious people who wish to claim science somehow gives them some reason to believe only a God could have created this universe. It's just silly. And the fact that physics hasn't done their unification job yet and hasn't explained to you that the fundamental universe gets simpler, not more complicated, yeah, that's bad on physics. But you're still perverting the hell out of what physics says to imply that somehow if I change a few constants here or there, the whole universe collapses, because that's a pile of shit. Alright, so whatever this is, waive the rules. I hate stupid icons. This is an example of a burned out troll. Someone give him spliff. I don't know what the fuck that means. I just hate these shitheads. Why doesn't this... I don't know what it is with Linux sometimes, but man... I mean, it is Firefox. It could be Firefox. Could be YouTube, but, you know, who knows. But even, like I said, loading this page just takes longer than it should. But, I mean, it's not a very complex thing. Delete the comment, please. Alright. Why you keep clicking your responding to comments. So, this is just no one, nobody. Why you keep clicking your responding to comments, you're not playing or responding to a video. Yeah, that's right. Sometimes you could just paraphrase what a video is about. I didn't find the video at all compelling or interesting. Why should I waste 6 minutes playing it? Didn't say anything. I paraphrased what it says. What it says is, science says if you change one of these facts, everything blows up. Well, if the universe is that sensitive, then a God must have made it because it's so finely tuned. It's a silly argument. Fuck, that's why I didn't play the video. I mean, I'm really not going to go out and debunk religion on this channel. I mean, fuck, you people are just so far behind. I mean, it's clearly a huge problem. I mean, you're all just searching for God. You have no interest in understanding the universe. You just want it to be made by something so you can say it's his fault. You don't want to take any responsibility for our role here at all. Alright, so I'll do this one first. Batty boy. Aha, not a bad troll, brah, haha. Did not invent anything. Lost my shit. So again, so Tesla made a slight modification to motors during the point of their inception. The existing motor was basically invented by Edison, who basically made the motor out of a solenoid, right, from Morse code times. I mean, that's how much he understood motors, is that he basically figured out I can make a push-pull thing and make it turn it into a motor. So it is about as crude as you could get in terms of its efficiency. And so Tesla made a few little modifications to that. And over time, other people made bigger and more important modifications, and the Tesla-style motors aren't even in use now, except for in special applications like ceiling fans, maybe, or hydraulic circumstances where you don't, where having a brushless motor is very important. Because you want the motor to be sealed. But not, he didn't invent anything. Okay, he didn't invent motor. Okay, he modified motor. And so this is, again, I don't know how you morons think Tesla was if it wasn't for Tesla, we would have been hundreds of years behind. It's absolutely nonsense. It was the most, there was more inventing going on during Tesla's life than at any point in human history, in the sense that there was so much to invent because they just figured out how so many things work. We invented the nuclear bomb. I mean, I can give you a million examples of all the stuff invented in Tesla's lifetime. And Tesla's role in all of that stuff is non-existent. So, I mean, you're just such a silly fuck to think Tesla was the god of invention. He wasn't even close. And again, compared to Edison, I mean, it's a pathetic conversation. You're just pathetic. But again, just seeking a god. They want a god. And they want the god to be some putz who sits around in hotel rooms being God. You know, no perspiration. You know, all inspiration, no perspiration. I mean, Edison and Tesla couldn't have been opposite characters. You know. Let's see. You see a ton of people who know just a little about quantum theory and use it to justify their beliefs, but this is happening for literally everything. Well, I totally disagree. You know, it's not everything. You can't use everything to create religion. You know, you can't use this pen to create religion. They heal from cancer, ? Is God's merit. Well, again, that's even a really poor example, I just argue, because clearly I think more people lose their faith in the process of dying from cancer than gain their faith. So I don't think that one works for their side at all. They win the lottery, yes. Well, how many people actually do that? So it's not going to convert too many people, is it? No. Of course, is God again. For example, it was Catholic priests that invented the Big Bang Theory to prove, this is his theory no doubt, through apparent hard determinism, that godly order of the universe. So again, another completely illogical statement. Somehow you prove the Catholic religion by demonstrating the evidence for a Big Bang, not a 7 days of creation 6,000 years ago. So by disproving essentially Genesis, you somehow solidify Catholicism. I don't think it really works that way. I think it's clearly that would work to their disadvantage. Einstein did not like the quantum mechanics because of his very religious Jewish heritage. Completely silly remark. I mean, you know, I don't know, but to say for sure, but I don't think Einstein spent 1/1,000,000th of his conscious life in a synagogue. Frankly. God doesn't play dice with the universe. So what is a really, you know, just proving how Einstein was a clever man, this is called a witticism. God doesn't play dice with the universe. And use these witticisms as rhetoric. So in an argument, if you can come up with something witty like this, a play on words, you can really, really trounce your adversary. And this was a really brilliant bit of rhetoric. It doesn't mean Einstein believed in God. It just means he's using the idea that you'll not find anything in the structure of the universe that has random dice. If they have dice, they're loaded dice. There's no random dice anywhere. Very good. Little brilliantism by Einstein. That obviously went right the fuck over your racist head. Is one of his most famous quotes. Right. A very clever remark. That doesn't mean he believed in God. And he clearly made it clear that he doesn't believe in God. So just keep pretending he did for your own purposes. Most armchair physicists have inarticulate knowledge about quantum mechanics, says you again. Knowledge of the subject has not diffused through society beyond the confused initial theories from half a century past. Well, clearly the theories have evolved, and their ability to tap dance around the subject has changed. Clearly Feynman was tap dancing a different way. He was playing a different quantum mechanics tune than a lot of other people who believe in quantum mechanics. Okay, Feynman doing the light as a corpuscle, it's not a wave. Clearly Feynman had no interest in wave theory, and his argument was that the universe does play dice. His argument was there is a function in the universe that causes random action. So a pretty different interpretation. And so for you to say you know what quantum mechanics is, and Feynman didn't, when Feynman's essentially one of the fathers of it, sorry, hard sell, whizoid. New Agers and religious apologists see speculation such since discredited as consciousness interacts directly with reality. See speculation since discredited, so this sentence doesn't mean anything. New Agers and religious apologists see speculations since discredited that consciousness interacts directly with reality. Now, how you discredit a proposition that can't possibly have any evidence, I don't know. I mean, it's discredited by the lack of evidence for it. So clearly they'd have a hard time figuring out how to measure this consciousness effect and take this as proof that science backs their worldview. Well, clearly a lot of scientists do. Clearly a lot of quantum mechanics sounds just like a religion. Singularities, the magical event horizons that somehow you can cross, and they'll create interstellar movies with all kinds of garbage science in it, and those are all created by physicists who are playing along. So it does seem that they wish to invoke a lot of religious style hope. And then you get into many worlds and Heisenberg uncertainties. They're really screaming it's not a deterministic universe. A lot of quantum mechanics physics is basically saying it loud and clear. And I think Feynman was saying it loud and clear, even if he would say he believes in determinism. Clearly, the invocation of random dice kills determinism. You can't have it both ways. Well, it doesn't technically, so I wish... it's just so hard to say. I mean, obviously the determinism would be in the outcome, in that it has to be 10 out of 100. So the probability says there's 10 out of 100. But which 10 can be variable in Feynman's world? And I would argue that it can't be in the real world, because the whole reason it comes out probabilistically correct is because there is a structure that forces 10 of them out of 100 to be there. There's a physical reality that's creating the circumstances, not a magical reality. And clearly quantum mechanics is indicating a magical reality. So anyway, for the Jew comment, I'm deleting your comment. And if you do any more of that shit, then I'll just block you. Totally unnecessary rubbish. So, I think that's it. I think I'll block the Homo sapien argument too. I'm really not interested. You want to do God stuff, do it someplace else. I mean, religion can be debunked by a lot of people. I could have debunked it when I was 5 years old, so 7 maybe. 7, I was already making pretty good arguments. So go find a 7-year-old and see if you can convince him of your wacky theories. That if you pull an apple off a tree and throw it into the universe, the planet Earth will crash into the sun. Okay. Totally dependent on the fine-tuning. Can't change anything or everything blows up. Yeah, pile of shit. Alright, so that seems like enough of a video. I've done what I intended to do, sort of. So it's an important, I mean, it's something I want to put into the foundational videos on this channel, the Start Here videos, is some conversation about how distant I think physics is from what its mission should have been, which is a unification theory. It really is. It's the logical destination. It's where you're going to end up in the end. The universe is a checkerboard. You just, and if you're not looking for it, you're not going to find it. Pretty much the truth. And they're not looking for it, so they're not going to find it. Okay, so enough said. Until the next time and such.